Thank you very much. Good evening to my colleagues who are here. Good evening to the UNC family and friends. I want to give you the assurance tonight that the UNC stands solid as a rock, and we will stand with all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, solid as a rock. We are at a time where our nation is in mourning. Right now, as we are here speaking, I know the OWTU is engaged in a candlelight vigil outside of the Paria property at Pointe-a-Pierre. Last night in Couva, MP Rafi Ratiram and other MPs gathered with our councillors from that region and friends and family for a candlelight village vigil and to give support to the families there. And we will continue to stand with those families. You know, we took a break last week because of the auspicious occasion of Shivaratri. We have begun the Lenten period, so we're in a very blessed time. And tomorrow we celebrate, as my colleague mentioned, International Women's Day. But I was hoping that when we return to this Monday night virtual, we took the break last week, that circumstances in our country would have been in a better place, that we would have all been in a better place. But now our nation is in mourning over the deaths of these divers and the trauma of their families, and then the brutish, inhumane actions of the state in handling the matter on that day and those fateful days and up to now, as our colleagues here have shared with you, that no humanitarian efforts whatsoever. A tragedy has happened that has gripped the nation, but our government, as usual, is MIA, missing in action. You could issue all your statements about the war in Ukraine, and you could see the humanitarian efforts happening there where there's a war. But in our own country, this government has not a care for anyone. Not a care. You know, even when Stuart Young stood up giving its press conference there, they did not even tell the families before he announced that these persons were dead. He made an announcement through the public media where these people camped out, the families camped outside in a shed there, tent there. What, not even a tent, they didn't even provide that effort. And as you would have heard, and up to last night I was speaking to some of the families, not a word, not a hand, no effort whatsoever from the government to reach out to the bereaved families. They have children. They have children who need to be given that support at this time, wives, and nothing has happened. Not one single thing. Tonight we remember the late Faisal Kurban, the late Rishi Nagesar, the late Yusuf Henry, the late Kazim Ali Jr., and offer our deepest condolences to the families of these men. May God grant you all the grace to come to terms with this very great loss in your lives. You mentioned it, MP, you said these men, they were sons, they were fathers, they were brothers, they were husbands. And it broke my heart, as I'm sure it broke many hearts in this country, to read each day of the ordeal. I think this is something that will be a turning point in our nation's history. We must not forget, as MP is telling us, do not forget. Never forget the heartlessness of this government. No care whatsoever, no humanitarianism in them, none whatsoever. All of our country stands with the families during this very difficult time, and we will never forget. I also wish to extend best wishes to Mr. Christopher Budram and his family, the lone survivor. I know he's still recovering from the traumatic event. And we saw it in the photographs when he went to the funeral of his colleague. We saw how heartbroken he was, still suffering from his injuries. We want to wish you, Mr. Budram, full recovery and pray that you find the strength to deal with this very traumatic experience. And whilst we do that, we celebrate and pay tribute to the heroes, Rana Rawata, Michael Corban, another diver, Corey. They risked their lives to save their colleagues on that fateful day. This tragedy, which occurred at Paria Fuel Trading, is one of the worst industrial accidents in 40 years. The worst in 40 years. And it could not have happened. It should not have happened when we have the worst government ever in our country. I want to assure the families involved in this tragedy and all of Trinidad and Tobago, the opposition will continue to pressure the Rowley regime to ensure that justice is done. And so we must talk about Mr. Eugene Tia. He may be a great expert in whatever field that he is an expert in. I have no difficulty with his expertise. I have no difficulty with him as a person. So don't take this as a personal attack. This is an attack on the integrity of any investigation to have Mr. Tia as one of the persons on the investigative team. So they set up the Special Investigative Committee to uncover the truth of what happened at Paria. And when the day finally comes, when Keith Rowley is removed from office, you know what will be his legacy? The legacy he will be leaving behind is a trail of destruction, followed by a litany of special committees meant to investigate his own incompetence. And Ben Singh told you about some of them. They have set up about 37 committees. And every time it's to cover up. Because when the committee reports come back or do not come back, nothing is heard of it again. And I'll share some of those with you tonight. What happened to the committee to investigate that massive blackout? Barry talked of it, MP Barry spoke of it earlier. And even these committees are falling apart. I wouldn't be surprised if Rowley will have to set up a committee to investigate why all his 37 committees fell apart. That might be the next committee. But then we will be there. And we will launch full inquiries into every one of these. You will not get away. We will not forget all these matters that you have covered up, swept under the carpet. We will not let it rest. And I promise you today, as surely as the day follows the night, that when we form, not if, when we form the government again, we will launch full inquiries into all these tragedies and fiascos. And now the Energy Chamber should not be allowed to aid and abet the government in sanitizing this investigation. We should call them out. We should not allow them to help the government sanitize this investigation. Is the Energy Chamber supporting their friend Tia in order to help the government sanitize the investigation? That's the question. So we note with grave concern, I'm telling you. I put out a release saying we object to Mr. Tia being on that investigative committee. What happened? Not the government jump up to say nothing wrong with him. No, whom? The Energy Chamber. Let's find out who the Energy Chamber is, and then you'll understand what is happening. They come out there to defend the government, to prop up the government. But when the whole energy sector has collapsed, not a squeak. When these 4 divers were down in that pipeline, who could even imagine their trauma? I don't think we could even imagine what it may be. And just the thought of it is so horrifying. Did the Energy Chamber come and say anything? Have they said anything about the divers who have died? Well, no. Jump up and say they have total confidence in Mr. Tia to sit on this committee. After I questioned that appointment, as I said, the Chamber responded to support the Rowley government. And so I'm saying, whilst the entire nation wringing their hands and their hearts wrenching, not a word from the Energy Chamber. 4 dead divers, troubling circumstances. That is not a concern for them. There was no press release about that. Eugene Tia being on the investigative committee, however, we got a rapid press statement from them to contradict what I had said. Tonight I am asking again, was this overtly political and boorish statement supported by all the members of the Energy Chamber, all the members of its executive management, including those members representing oil and gas multinationals. And I want to ask this question today. You pointed out that you're going to put Shell and BP to put representatives on the investigative committee. You know, up to today, this committee has not even begun its work, has not begun any work. That is frightening in itself. And earlier o'clock, we called out the fact that Shell and BP, great multinationals, have been here for decades, but they are clients of the state. They are clients. Do you understand what that means? They are clients of the state. In other words, they owe their license and their contracts, everything they get. They owe it to whom? To the government. Therefore, they cannot be independent in this investigative committee. I wouldn't say they eat our food, but they owe their livelihoods, their business, to government action. So Wade Mark, Senator, had earlier o'clock called out the point of these two representatives there. Very early in the day. I want to ask tonight if it is true that the head executives of these companies, not based in Trinidad, BP based in London and so on, they're based abroad, they're real bosses, whether they have refused to serve on the committee. Tell us whether they've agreed, and the question then will arise, how you could call the people name and you didn't ask them. You didn't find out if they would be willing to sit on it. They may have second thoughts about it, not because Wade Mark called them out, but they will have their own reasons, because as I say, they are dependent on the government. They are clients of the government for their livelihood and sustenance in this country. So I don't see them as being capable of having any independence in such an important investigation. And now, coming back to the Energy Chamber, I want to ask whether BPTT, Massey Wood, Atlantic LNG, EOG, Methanex, Shell, Ernst & Young, and other national and international corporate citizens, whether they have consciously entered into the political guile, because they are the people who have representatives on this Energy Chamber. Have these companies entered into the political guile? That would be most unfortunate, but it would make them fair political game. So I'm calling on all these persons who are in that Energy Chamber. Were you consulted? Did you all totally agree that Mr. Eugene Tier should sit on this committee? Were you consulted? And secondly, were you consulted when the Energy Chamber put out their statement to contradict what I had said about Mr. Tier? I'm asking that question because it's a real question at this time. It's shameful that members of the board of the chamber have no issue with Tier's presence on the committee. I wonder if when they recommended Mr. Tier's name to Stuart Young, because he's the man who is the minister responsible, recommended his name to Minister Young. I wonder if Minister Young told them, well, okay, he's a great man, but he was my client. I was his lawyer. He was also the client of Mr. Kwamina, Michael Kwamina. Did he tell them that? Did he forget? Because maybe the Energy Chamber, in good faith, put up a name they probably didn't even know that Stuart Young and Kwamina were the lawyers for Mr. Tier way back in the day. And what for? There were allegations against that board, the E-Tech board, about something with some bamboo. What is it? You remember the name of the company? Millions of dollars involved in some project that the E-Tech board had undertaken. And cases were brought against the members of the board. And that board was whose board? That board was appointed by a P&M government. Mr. Tier was a government appointee by the P&M government. So it's not just that he was Stuart Young's he was Stuart Young's client. Fellas are known P&M from way back in the day. He was appointed at P&M E-Tech board. How can you have somebody like that to investigate the deaths of 4 of our sons? How can you? An injury of a 5th, the one who escaped. How can you, Energy Chamber, stand for that? Maybe you didn't know. Maybe you just knew Eugene Tier, somebody who sat with you all in the Energy Chamber at some point. And I think it is very shameful that you have no problem with having Tia sitting on this committee. The facts are that the Energy Chamber's so-called respected Mr. Tia, respected Tia, already faced charges in mismanaging millions of dollars, as I said, when he served on the board of ETEC. In that matter, represented by, as I say, Stuart Young, the present Minister of Energy, and he was also represented by Michael Kwamena, who is now chairman of the board of Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited. That company now is the parent company of Paria. Do you see how? Join the dots. How can they ever be independent? How can that ever be? We want to have to ask now. How can the Energy Chamber have full confidence that a man like Tia, with his baggage, if you want to call it, PNM baggage, is so closely connected to the PNM party and government? Can he really hold the PNM government to account in any investigation? And several questions arise. First, the Energy Chamber can only have that confidence because the Energy Chamber does not represent the interests of the energy sector for the benefit of the country. They only represent the commercial interests of the individual members, whether or not this aligns with the national or sectoral interests. They're looking after their interests. I was inundated with calls and messages from energy sector contractors today, agreeing with my statement. They tell me they are fed up with this Energy Chamber, but they are afraid to speak out because they may lose jobs and be blacklisted. They have told me that they have long wanted to form their own representative group, but they fear victimization from this Energy Chamber. The Energy Chamber's only function seems to help members hobnob with government officials, get lucrative contracts thereby. Every single one of these persons on that Energy Chamber, they represent companies which depend on contracts and license from the government. In other words, they are clients of the state. Their livelihoods depends on the handouts from the government. So don't get fooled. Energy Chamber is independent. They are there seeking their own interests. Secondly, the Energy Chamber has questions to answer in this investigation regarding the quality, legitimacy, and legality of STOW certification, STOW certification, which they would have conferred on the companies involved. Is the Energy Chamber supporting their frontier in order to cover what could be their own exposure in this matter? Because they would have given out the STOW certifications. This chamber has forced STOW certification on contractors to work in the energy sector. This costs between $40,000 and $60,000 to implement, and contractors have to renew it every 2 years. By forcing STOW on the industry, this Energy Chamber has essentially pushed out the small contractors. Because you had to pay $40,000 to $60,000. You push out the small ones out there. So it's the big boys. The big boys, some of whom still play golf with the other golfing partners that you mentioned, MP. The Energy Chamber has said nothing about their STOW certifications in this matter. And they're now hiding behind OSHA. And I'm glad my colleague, MP Rambley, raised the issue of the responsibility and the duty of those who operate under OSHA. A very interesting point. They were making decisions when they were the ones to be, in a sense, regulators, to oversee it. And so people are asking if the Energy Chamber is using STOW to generate income for the Chamber's operations, and so is STOW a money-making venture by the Chamber? A third question arises. The Energy Chamber has long been rumored to be a pro-PNM party group. But clearly, with the government under immense pressure, have they now come out to defend their party, the PNM? Is that what they're doing? Is this true? Is this true that you're now openly attempting to support and defend your party? Remember, members of the Energy Chamber include whom? Again, think about it. You see the interlocking directorates in this business, you know. Mark Loquan of NGC fame. Remember that name? Mark Loquan. He's a member of the Energy Chamber. Government appointed to NGC, some millions of dollars story happened recently. Another member is Arlene Chow. Do you know who Arlene Chow is? She is of Heritage Petroleum fame. She sits on Heritage Petroleum. Can you see there's all these government appointees want to come and tell me and tell you and tell us that these people are independent, to carry out an independent investigation. Doesn't stop there. Vernon Paltu, appointed by this government to sit on national energy. So these are the people now telling me to respect here and he will do a great job and he's independent. Are you serious? Are you serious? Are you telling this? You want us to believe that? To believe that this man will be independent? They are all clients of the state. Clients of the state. And I want to say something. Under the government island, the energy chamber was treated as a valued stakeholder. Therefore, my government ensured some of the best incentives for exploration, which reap massive benefits for Trinidad and Tobago. Sadly, today, that same chamber remains silent instead of calling out the government to explain why natural gas production fell. They stay silent, not to squeak. Natural gas production is at a 15-year low. They have not asked why LNG production fell 48% in the third quarter of 2021. And most of all, why despite a 7-year high of energy prices, this nation is not benefiting because production has collapsed under the PNM. Were they sleeping when Petroleum was shut down? Not a squeak, not a word. But you want to come to tell me I shouldn't talk about Mr. Tia sitting on that committee. No, I will call you out for it. I will call you out. When you enter into the political arena, we will deal with you on the political platform. We will not shut up because I know our cause is just. And we know that justice must not, the maxim, the famous maxim, justice must not only be done, it must manifestly be seen to be done. And we'll come to the issue my colleague raised about bias in a moment. Where was the energy chamber for 11 months? Since Naikwan Energy blew up. You all remember that? Rowley, the only thing he probably did in the energy sector, he went to open this Naikwan plant. And after he opened it, about a month after, it exploded. Exploded. What is going on in Naikwan? Has the energy chamber asked anything about that? Who is going to pay back the 120 million US dollars owed when they only had 400,000 US dollars in the bank, that company? Was some of this money used to buy land and build houses, beach houses on the North Coast by persons affiliated with Naikwan? Just asking for a friend. Was some of that money used for that? And then we come to Republic Bank in this now. How did Republic Bank lend Naikwan all this money? How? Is it because Alison Lewis sits on the Republic Bank board and also on the Naikwan board? Is that why Republic picked up all this money to lend to these people when their bank account had so little in it? $120 million. And this whole Naikwan deal was a PNM cook-up using financing from the Republic Bank. So tell us what's happening there, Energy Chamber. Minister Young, tell us what's going on with that Naikwan plant that you all gave away. And whilst we're on it, Energy Chamber, I want to ask you, we are watching how the crude oil prices have been increasing. Taka sent me a little note that he did the research on it. Crude oil prices have surged to the highest it has been in 14 years. Is it a tragedy? We will be undergoing under this government. A Reuters report, March 6th, yesterday, in the first few minutes of trade on Sunday, both benchmarks rose to their highest since July 2008, with Brent at $139.13 a barrel and WTI, West Texas, at $130.50. Highest in 14 years. And as a reminder, remember, under the Manning government in July 2008, crude oil prices rose to $147.50 a barrel for Brent and $147.27 for WTI. And at the moment, we are climbing towards those prices. So attackers advised me that JP Morgan, when they asked, we're projecting, where will these oil prices go? JP Morgan are projecting as high as $185 per barrel. We should be celebrating now. Instead, we'll be crying because we don't refine our own oil anymore. So you'll sell it at a high price, but then you guess what will happen? The refined products that you have to import to come back down here, what's going to happen to that? Those prices will go sky high. So we'll be facing at the pumps, we will surely be seeing price increases at the pumps if this trend continues. When it continues, when this should have been something for us to be joyful and celebrate, these high oil prices, it's told that this week the price of crude oil can rise to the highest in almost 40 years. That's the projection. Yet this government, because of their bungling, their incompetence, we cannot benefit from that. That was our main lifeline, you would call it. Money, revenue stream. It still remains our only revenue stream because they have not done anything to diversify the economy. And yet, the people of this country cannot benefit from this. They closed the refinery. They put our economy in misery. And as I say, we are going to see on the verge of perhaps the greatest oil bonanza since 2008. And the JP Morgan people are correct. The highest oil price will be in 40 years. But we would be the highest in 40 years. And the question then is, who stands to lose? It is 1.4 million people in this country, all because of the incompetence of Rowley. So I want to tell the Energy Chamber and all these naysayers, I represent hundreds of thousands of persons. And these persons rely on the voices of the opposition to make sure that their voices are heard. Unlike those at the Energy Chamber, ordinary people can depend on us to raise our voices in their best interests. The Paria fuel tragedy, as I said, the worst in our nation for nearly 40 years. It is critical that the public have complete confidence in this committee to unearth the truth in the matter, not just for families of the deceased, but for the entire nation. It is imperative, I said before, that justice must not only be done in this tragedy, justice must also be seen to be done. And it cannot be done if you have Mr. Tia serving. It will then be whether it is actual bias or in the minds of a reasonable observer, as we say, the man in England, they talk about the Clapham bus, the man on the maxi taxi, to a reasonable observer. Can you truly say that there will not be any apparent bias on the part of Mr. Tia sitting on this committee? So remove him, he must go. He must go. You cannot allow him to continue to sit on that committee and expect to get an independent findings. All these findings will be tarnished by either actual bias or apparent bias. So we call in the UNC, we call for Mr. Tia to be removed from that committee. We move on. You mentioned the MP Rambali mentioned the Paria media release and so on. Now, if you're asking me, we are saying we have no confidence in this committee that you're setting up. They have no power to summon witnesses. They have no power to get people to produce documents. But we have an institution in our country, and we have an avenue in our law to allow for proper investigation, independent investigation, and have the powers to summon witnesses, to ask people to bring documents and so on. We have the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And in that regard, we have written, MP David Lee, with our consensus, has written to the chairman, Colin Imber, Chairman, Joint Select Committee, Energy Affairs, Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. In this letter, MP Lee is saying the content of this letter is asking the chairman of the committee to convene an urgent meeting to consider and discuss the events at Parrot Fuel Trading Company on 25th February 2022, which cost the lives of the 4 divers. And in this letter, MP Lee has sent it, and we are waiting a reply. So the Parliament has the power to summon witnesses and to make people produce documents. The Parliament may not be independent because the government is in the majority, but our standing orders allow us for that joint select committee has a responsibility to meet urgently so this matter can be discussed. The other avenue in law is under the Commissions of Inquiry Act. Again, you can go through there, and remember we have called for a commission of inquiry into the COVID, mishandling of the COVID. I tell you, we will do it. When we form government, we will do it. We will do it. And so we can utilize both methods. One does not preclude the other. A government-appointed committee, we have no faith, no trust, no confidence that that committee will be able to unearth the findings in an independent manner. But you have other ways, and in that regard, I want to talk about the new man. No, you talked about him already. I'll talk again. Anyone who looked at the Para press conference would have to query the intelligence of Newman George, with the greatest of respect. I felt ashamed of this man. He couldn't even string a sentence together. You know, Rory likes to call people dotish. Well, you know, he should check his friend, Newman. He should check his friend, Newman, next time he wants to call someone dotish. Between Newman George and Mark Loquan, who caused the NGC to lose the $500 million, we have two useless persons running our main state-owned energy companies. Two useless. I wouldn't call them dotish. I'll leave Mr. Rowley to call them that. In the appointment of Tia to protect Rowley, I'm asking the question. Is the appointment of Tia to protect Rowley's go for Newman? Do you remember I told you all about Ines Gate in Tobago some time ago? You know them fellas and neighbors, you know, they're private neighbors in Ines Gate, you know. The two of them buy these townhouses in Tobago, Ines Gate. They're neighbors. The Tobago posh private neighbors, exclusively for Rowley and his friends. And guess who is Rowley's neighbor at Ines Gate? That's what I'm telling you, Newman George. That's why Rowley doesn't care how much tears flow from families of the divers. He may be well hell-bent on protecting his neighbor, Newman George. Is there nothing to hide? Or if there is something to hide, why is Young putting his client on an independent committee? Why is Young crying and groveling for Eugene Tia? 1.4 million people in this country. And imagine that. The only people you can find to conduct an independent investigation are your friends, and your clients. 1.4 million. How come you're only picking people who already have an interest, who cannot be independent? Why? 1.4 million. And we have to ask if this is an effort to protect Newman George. You know, I'm told that Para has restarted work. Did you all hear? On this same place, Berth 5. I'm asking them now, is that another part of a cover-up? A few days ago, the company was saying they had no idea about how the incident happened, which claimed these lives. And even before the committee started investigation work, Para is now being reported, sent the divers to work on the same pipe. To do what? To do what? Are they conducting repairs? Are they fixing problems caused by this incident? Are they covering up? If the committee is not yet fully constituted, and the investigation is therefore unable to properly commence, why has Para proceeded to engage a new contractor to resume normal duties? Stuart Young and Newman George need to tell the country, is it true that a dive company by the name of Hull Support Services Limited has been engaged by Para to continue work on the pipeline where this incident happened? My information is that Hull Support Services Limited conducted an orientation safety meeting yesterday to commence work or diving operations on the pipeline. What? I mean, doesn't that frighten us? How can it be? Is it true Para is in a race right now to commission or put this pipeline back into service? Since Friday 25th, when Para became aware of this horrific accident, why wasn't an all-stop call And the police called in immediately. Why? In every crime scene, you say they lock it down, you stop. Is it now that you're going to cover up whatever may have caused this accident? Is this to be part of a cover-up? That should be a crime scene. And tonight I'm calling on the DPP and the Commissioner of Police, the TTPS, to get into this investigation, to lock down what could be possible evidence. Yes, to avoid contamination of evidence, tampering with evidence. The TTPS and the DPP should become involved. This is my view. My colleague says state-sanctioned murder. My view here, it could be involuntary homicide, or it could be deliberate homicide. We don't know. That is what the investigation will tell us, and that's why you must preserve the evidence. So why wasn't an all-stop call and the police brought in? Why? Why not? Did PARIA conduct a proper safety analysis for this job, which is standard procedure every morning before work starts? Which PARIA supervisor or client rep was assigned to the job to ensure all safety protocols would have been adhered to? Who gave the Coast Guard authority to stop the rescue? My colleague spoke of that too. The Coast Guard officers stopped the rescue efforts. They will also have questions to answer and could well face civil suit from the affected families. Why are ships taking oil from berth 5, the scene of the accident? Why has PARIA not cordoned off the sea line, what has become, in my view, a crime scene? Why this extreme level of disrespect, the haste to cover up? How can you resume normal operations at the crime scene? You remember when you see them thing on TV? They put yellow tape all around nobody. Nobody could enter PARIA compound when the drivers needed rescuing. You locked down the gates, nobody could come. And now, what are you doing? Bringing in new people to conduct operations at what could be a crime scene. Stop it, please, stop it. I call again on the TTPS and the DPP to become involved in this investigation. So, another committee, I told you there are about 37 of them. Let me go through those very quickly for you, because it's always important not to forget. Do not forget. Do not forget. We must not forget. Committee upon committee, and nothing coming out of them. 1, 29th October, that's just after they went into government. 2015, October 2015. They decided to establish an Economic Development Advisory Board to report to the Prime Minister. What became of them? Collapsed. January 10, 2018, dissatisfied Farrell quits the Economic Advisory Board. It collapsed. Second, Wednesday, January 20, 2016, Early Childhood Education Review Committee. Next committee. What happened to it? The Prime Minister collapsed. Prime Minister, on the dollars spent for education, too many students still falling through the cracks. What become of that? Anybody knows, Anita? Collapsed. June 29, 2016, Sandals Project Committee. Scandals. What happened? Collapsed. Right? March 13, 2017, PM appoints committee to investigate Petrotrin operations. What was the result of that committee report? Shut it down. Shut down Petrotrin. Send everybody home. No good ever comes on this committee. They want, is it TSCT putting a committee? Yeah, that is the playbook. That's the same playbook. You bring your committee with your handpicked people to say the company gone, it's dead, blah, 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 too much money, and then shut them down, send the workers home. July 12, 2017, Cabinet appointed committee to oversee hunting in TNT. Did we ever get a report? I don't recall. September 15, 2017, we get a report on the ferry probe. Remember, just as a Prime Minister went on national TV and said something, what was it? Crooked. Most crooked things happen with respect to the ferry and Bridgemans and all of that. Anything happen? Nothing. Nothing came out of that. September 22, 2017, inappropriate video subject of Education Ministry probe. What became of that? Collapsed too. October 17, 2017, manpower audit report. This was the TTPS. Remember when they were campaigning in 2015, we're going to do a manpower audit of the TTPS. What became of it? What became of that report, just like the COVID committee you set up? Nothing. You know, it's just like putting a plaster on a sore. Without really healing, you're just covering it up. That's what anytime something happens in this country, set up a committee. Committee number 9, Ministry to probe health and safety issues at St. Joseph Secondary. What became of that? November 3rd, 2017, set up then. April 5th, 2018, Committee number 10, report on OAS Dominica issue sent for review. My colleague MP in Arsing spoke about that. This is where we voted against waiving the fees for Dominica. Imagine that. Imagine that. We voted against, and the outcry was so great because Dominica was the effects of the hurricane. We went up to the OAS, Trinidad and Tobago, not me, their representative, the PNM, and voted against Dominica. What became of the report? You said, when people cried out, okay, set up committee. One-man committee you set up, I think it was Ambassador Thomas. Committee number 11, August 3rd, 2018. Committee established to address street dwelling. Street dwelling, yes, that's a serious humanitarian issue. What became of that report? People still on the streets dwelling. What has become of it? That's August 2018. Committee 12, Wednesday, October 30th, 2019. Probe body claims cover-up in the Smith case. My colleague MP Narson spoke about that. That committee that was set up in 2019 into the Darrell Smith matter. You've spoken about it. Nothing came of it, except taxpayers' dollars, $150,000 paid as hush money. 13, Monday, June 2019. Technical committees appointed for the National Social Mitigation Plan. Sounds great. Kaka, it's a good committee to set up. But what became of it? Nothing. 14, Wednesday, 7th August 2019. Committee established to evaluate refinery bids. What has happened with that, by the way? What has happened with the sale of the refinery? The refinery is now scrap iron. You can't even open that back if you want to open it back. Total scrap iron, all these years sitting there. Evaluate refinery bids, boy, God. Promising the OWTU, lying to the country, you're going to sell it to OWTU. Never happened. Committee number 15, September 18, 2019. Energy Efficiency Committee submits report to Minister Lujan. Well, what became of that? That's with Tech. What became of that? Well, Mr. Hunt fired or resigned from the cabinet. I'm not sure which one. What has happened to that report from 2019? Report 16, Saturday, September 28, 2019. Tech Committee to probe Tobago blackout. Wow. Did we get that Tobago blackout report? Because they now have another committee to probe the Trinidad blackout. So what's going on? Committee 17, April 18, 2020. Ministry to probe employers who do not sign social relief forms. What? Does that make any sense? To probe employers who don't sign social relief forms. This is April 2020. What became of that? Committee 18, Thursday, 2nd July 2020. Rowley forms committee to probe depressed communities after protests. Well, Mr. Rowley, that was 2020, July 2020. Oh, that was just before the elections. Going and probe depressed communities after the protests. Well, it's still in depressed communities. Nothing has changed. 19, November 6, 2020. Committee will guide government on port privatization. Well, they come in with that, eh? They want to privatize the ports very badly, that port. Again, sending workers home. Let's see if it's for their friends and family who will become involved. Wow. Committee 20, 2021, Digital Transformation Advisory Committee. Wow. Our children don't have laptops in the schools. They don't have devices. They don't have anything. Huh? No broadband. No access to the internet and stuff. You talk about Committee for Digital Transformation. Advisory Committee. Where is that committee? Is it still advising the Minister of Education, Gadsby Bundles or whatever is her name, is still advising the minister to how to get devices. Look, when we were there, I made a promise on the platform in 2010. For the UNC, we made the promise we will provide the laptops to children. And I am proud that after our 5-year stint in office, everybody from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 received laptops. Teachers received laptops. And we had promised another, and I will make this promise again, we had moved from the high schools now, secondary. We had said that in our next term, we will provide the devices, tablets, for the children in the primary school. Now, if they had continued that program, we would have been way over any digital issues, way over, way ahead of the world. In fact, when we started that laptop initiative, went up to the United Nations and so on, Trinidad and Tobago was complimented, highly complimented, as one of the few countries that had done two things. One, that we had provided secondary education to all. You remember that? All students under the Pandey government, all secondary school students got a place, or age got a place. And we were also highly commended for our laptop initiative. They stopped all of that, and you know, it's strange, I read to you the numbers on another night about the school feeding program, how that has been so severely cut. So millions of dollars that you did not have to spend on the school feeding, you didn't spend it anyway, you could have used it for the laptops. All that could have been done, but they have no care. Let's put it that way. They don't care. They don't care. Where did we reach? Committee number 21 now, Amit. Committee on SCA on Concordat Review Committee established. 25 February 2021. What became of that? Dinesh? Oh, it's a new committee. It's morphed into a new committee. So I have 37, that will be committee number 38 maybe. So here we are now, committee number 22, April 2021. Ministry probes, launches probe into Naikwan blast. I spoke about that earlier. Friday, April 9th, 2021. Where are we? Almost coming into April 2022. Almost a year. What has happened? March 5th, 2022, a report, ministry probe still in the air, 11 months after Naikwan GTL explosion. Reported in the Trinidad Expresso, nothing, up in the air. Committee 23, March 5, 2021, Cabinet Subcommittee's report on WASA before the JSC. So we'll hear more about that, because by the time they come back, as your water is going up and people getting fired, losing their jobs. So let's wait and see that one. July 23rd, 2021, Ministry COPS probe claims of elder abuse at home for the aged. What has happened with that? Committee 25, Thursday, July 8, 2021, independent team appointed to investigate child abuse at children's home. What has happened to that? 26, Monday, 8 November 21, Cabinet Committee to discuss credit union sector's future. Credit union sector future. Well, there's no future. That committee too has collapsed. 27, November 24, 2021, Prime Minister Rowley distributes instruments of appointment to Cabinet-appointed SEA committee. I guess that's the one Dinesh, you said that's the one it morphed into. Then we have 28, December 21. National Security Minister announces another probe into FUL, as firearm users license issuances. They went through all this big thing about who getting firearms and where getting firearms, legal firearms. All of that was to get Gary out. All of that was done. What has become of that? Nothing. Big probe, but you get rid of Gary, so on your merry way. Nothing has come of that whatsoever. Spend all that time and money for people who legally got guns, but you set up no committee, spend no money, no responsibility to find out why we have so many illegal guns in the country. Nothing about illegal guns, but you're running on people who got their guns legally. Here we are again, 29, getting tired of so many committees. 29, January 7, 2022, food cards abuse under probe. Food cards abuse under probe. That's January this year. What has happened with that? 30th, Committee 30, January 15, 22. PM orders probe on COVID. My colleague spoke of that COVID probe. Nothing has come of it. All the recommendations contained in nothing. Nothing has been done. Committee 31, Monday, January 31, 2022. EMA launches probe into partial collapse of South Trunk Road. The creek, the road down on the creek, you all remember that? Remember Dr. Munir said it crumbled like cricks, big creek. Yes. Committee 32, so where's that probe? What has happened with it? 32, February 8, 2022. Heinz, probe started into the death of Venezuelan baby. You remember? Shot by the Coast Guard in mother's arms. Shot that baby. Probe. Who is doing that probe? Is the Coast Guard investigating the Coast Guard? What has happened with that probe? Committee 33, February 9, 2022. Cox, bogus rent claims under probe. Bogus rent claims under probe. I think these people wake up in the morning and any little problem we have in the country, committee. 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 It's a government of committees that go nowhere, do nothing, and get us nowhere better than where we are. 34, Friday, February 11, 2022. 2 separate probes in the Mosquito Creek collapse. See that? 2, because I read one before. Then there's it morphed now. Here's the second one, Friday, February 11, reported in The Guardian. And Sunday, 30 January, engineers to NIDCO share findings of Mosquito Creek probe with us. That's a report. We come now to Committee 35. Friday, February 18, 2022. Independent expert committee to probe cause of a national response to island-wide blackout. Remember that? We're still in the dark. Nothing has happened with it. Monday, 20th February, 2022. Committee number 36. Young. Committee to probe pariah divers. That's the one we are talking about now. And March 4th, Cabinet Committee to review, review the state of TSTT. Well, you know what's going to happen next. When they finish reviews, they shut it down, send everybody home. So that's about 37. Some of you brighter guys might find more to add to the list of all these committees. Huh? Stuart Young also collapsed, yes. Yes, let's remember that too. The Minister of Energy collapsed at some point in time. So where has Rowley been all these days? We haven't seen him for a while. I see he's going to start conversations tomorrow. Conversations with the people. So we look forward to not listening to him, because I don't think he will have anything new to tell us. And we have to ask, why you blank Guyana for their energy conference? Why? Trinidad and Tobago was a leader in energy. You blank Guyana, you didn't go. You had there over 150 organizations attended. Yes? You had Barbados, Mia Motley starring, Suriname starring, Guyana starring. Where was Trinidad and Tobago? But you jump on a plane with your partners and rush down to Doha. Why you blank Guyana? Look at what did you bring back from Doha? You haven't told us. So tomorrow when you talk, tell us what you did in Doha. Tell us what arrangements, how did we benefit? How will our country benefit from that visit you paid to Doha, which has to do with gas exporting states, and we have a shortage of gas in this country. So he went to tell them how to bust a gas exporting state. That's all he could do. Because that's what he's done to Trinidad and Tobago. We were number 1 or in the top 5 of exporters of natural gas to the eastern seaboard of the United States. We were. What has happened? PNM in power, Rowley in power. That is what has happened. So he jets off to Doha, blanks Ghana, blanks the CARICOM meeting in Belize a couple of days ago, and we have not seen him about. He surfaced on Friday in the parliament to come and throw some crumbs, to say, hey, lifting some restrictions on this COVID, hey, what a great man I am. Take that, take that, take that. Take the heat off the tragedy. And man, you have no humanity. You come to the parliament. Why couldn't you extend condolences and best wishes to the families of the affected divers? Any human being. You come to make your first statement. You're missing in action for weeks. You're making your first statement in parliament. Not one word. Lifting COVID restrictions. Not one word about the Simangal report and the tragedy that they have unfolded in the health sector. Not a word about that. But pelting, flinging crumbs to people about your restrictions for COVID being lifted. So where is he? He has surfaced. We look forward. I say we don't look forward, but he'll be talking to you folks tomorrow in his conversations. I want to ask a few questions I would like him to answer when he speaks tomorrow. You will recall that it is this government that allowed a sanctioned plane from Venezuela to land in Trinidad. Remember that, Delcy? You allowed sanctioned persons who came on that sanctioned plane to land in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is the same government who, using Paria Fuel Company, facilitated an illegal shipment of gasoline to Venezuela by an individual who is also sanctioned under current sanctions to the U.S. That's the kind of laundering, you know. You talk about money laundering. It's a kind of laundering that where it is that you are allowing illegal shipment of gasoline. The question I want to ask Mr. Rowley for your answer tomorrow: how long has your government been facilitating the shipment of Venezuelan crude to help in evading U.S. sanctions? Why are tankers carrying sanctioned Venezuelan crude oil coming into our waters, and then you know what they do? They change the documentation as it's coming from Trinidad and Tobago. That's laundering. Because Venezuela is under sanctions, cannot sell to the countries where they are sanctioned, so you pass it through Trinidad as though it's Trinidad oil. Is that happening? It comes here, the cargo of origin, the origin of your cargo is changed from Venezuela to TNT. Is that really happening? Does that have anything to do with that pipeline where these divers went missing and died? Does that have anything to do? What is Berth 5 being used for? Why are you rushing to repair Berth 5 when it's a crime scene, or at least a scene of a tragedy, an accident? I am asking you, Mr. Prime Minister, tell me tomorrow this is not true, and I'm sure we will be very happy. But you owe the country an answer. How long has your government been facilitating shipment of Venezuelan crude oil to help them evade sanctions? Now, I have no problem you went down to Doha, and I'm sure tomorrow you will update the country with a report of the goodies that you got on that visit. But, you know, you met with the president of Iran. It's out on international media. You met with the president of Iran. Now, there is nothing, absolutely nothing wrong about meeting with the president of Iran. Nothing. There's nothing wrong. But have you forgotten, Keith Rowling, that it is your government who imposed economic sanctions on the Islamic Republic of Iran? You did it in the parliament. Your Attorney General brought the order to sanction Iran. That is subsistent in our law, that we have an order approved by the parliament, by this government, to sanction Iran. So what is this duplicity? You come to parliament, what is your policy? You place economic sanctions on Iran, but you meet in Iran to do what? What will you do? Are you going to lift the sanctions? You know what you could have done? You could have done what other countries are doing. You know, there are a lot. Our foreign policy is so screwed up, I think is the word. It's so messy. It's so inconsistent. We have none. On January 11th, 2019, your government moved strongly for TNT to impose sweeping sanctions on the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, we are not at war with the Islamic Republic of Iran. We are under no obligation to join the rhetoric or fight battles of the larger countries who have their own geopolitical interests. We in TNT, we have our own battles to fight, and that is the development of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Our foreign policy strategy has always been to promote peace and development, to be a friend of all and an enemy of none. That does not mean that we have to agree with everything that every country does. We have the right to object and criticize when necessary, but we do not engage in wars. We don't go in campaigns. We don't go on crusades. That's not the way of democratic Trinidad and Tobago. And then we don't fight for regime changes. We don't go on crusades. Our foreign policy has been one of peace and development for all. We have our own problems here. So there is no issue with meeting the government of Iran, the leader of Iran. No issue per se. But you were the one pushing the sanctions against them. And now he's talking about contradicting his own policy. We have to be very concerned. And here's some context, as I said. Didn't go to Ghana Energy Conference. Miss Belize CARICOM. Fly down to Doha. And you just can't explain the logic in that. In your policy strategy, just like when you voted against Dominica getting the waiver of the fees of the OAS, we have no consistent foreign policy. So, the PNM, you took a stand, didn't want to go to Ghana because you were backing another party that lost the election. Perhaps that's why you didn't go. So we see other countries, they have taken out a foreign policy strategy, big countries, that they work with Iran. That is what you could have worked out instead of imposing these sanctions on Iran and then running down there to do what? To beg for money? To beg for investment? Please tell us, what was the purpose of meeting the leader of Iran? And I make it abundantly clear, I have absolutely no problem. But Mr. Arori, explain your inconsistency in foreign policy. You were the one, and your team in the parliament, pushing down the sanctions on Iran. We objected to many things at the time, and we still object. We don't just jump and follow when somebody tells us to do something. So as I close, I want to thank you all very much for your attention this evening. I want to thank all my colleagues, MP Padarat, MP Indar Singh, MP Dinesh Rambali, our two chairs, Councillor Raquel and Councillor Amit Suknanan. Thank you all for. And MP Anita Haynes, way down at the back because we have to social distance, but thank you as well for your powerful contributions. And thanks to all of you. Angie also spoke, our sister Angie Benjamin. Can I wish all the women in our land and the men happy International Women's Day tomorrow. I thank you all very much, and God bless.
I need the kind of love that